Pennsylvania Treasurer Stacey Garrity, who is facing re-election this year, bought $20 million in Israel bonds to show support. Her Democratic opponents question her motives. Protesters urged State Treasurer to divest from Israel bonds in light of escalating Palestinian deaths. Questions arise about the motivations behind her decision and implications for Pennsylvania's financial and political landscape. Joining us to shed light on this complex issue is Kate Huangpu, a government reporter for Spotlight PA. Welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
When I first read this headline, even before reading this article, the first thing I thought of was, is this legal? Can the Treasury actually use taxpayers' dollars for this specific cause? But apparently it is legal. So it's just a breakdown of, I guess, her motivations behind this and how is this legal using tax, no matter where you stand on this issue, using taxpayers' dollars for this particular reason.
Yeah, to be clear, Pennsylvania's been investing in Israel bonds for about 30 years now. So it's an investment that the state has approved of. I think it's drawing attention now, obviously, because of the sort of geopolitical climate that we're in. But essentially, the treasurer has pretty wide-ish berth, I guess you could say, about what kind of investments she can make because she's independently elected. She's not answering to the governor or whoever. She was elected based off of theoretically her own political agenda. So for her, the justification that she would say is that this is something that's been approved. It's assessed as a good financial investment. And it also happens to promote a state that she would say is a democracy in the Middle East. So once the treasurer sort of figures out with her investment committee that an investment makes sense for the state, that it will provide returns, she can kind of from there has more freedom in deciding what kind of things she wants to focus on.
So the state treasurer has a lot of freedom to do how to handle taxpayers' dollars. Is that what you're saying? At her discretion?
Well, I think she would argue otherwise, where there is basic financial priorities she has to fulfill. So it's not like, she can invest in whatever she wants. There's the basic priorities of, is this in the interest of the state's finances? Will this make money for us, essentially? But then from there, she does have more choice in what she wants to invest in. And to be clear, also, yes, we've been investing in Israel bonds for 30 years, but the investment that she added in October, right after the war, was significant. I think it was nearly doubling how much we had already invested in Israel bonds.
Has she stated exactly the reason why they increased and specifically said, her support for Israel? Is that came out already or?
Yeah, in her statement following the investment, she said this is a way to show support for the state of Israel that was attacked by Hamas following the October 7th sort of taking of the hostages. So it seemed like it was a direct response to that war.
So in your article, you mentioned that there have been protests against this. What has been the opposition? Obviously, I'm assuming just because what's happening in the Middle East, there's been really passionate protests on either side here. So what have the protesters been protesting about in this situation?
Yeah, and it's essentially that these Israel bonds are backed by the Israeli government. So we're giving them money, essentially, and they say they will pay us back with interest in X amount of years. So the state treasury is giving them money, and the protesters are just disagreeing with how Israel is treating Gazans, Palestinians during the war. That's their government using the funds to attack Hamas with huge civilian repercussions. I believe 25,000 Palestinians or Gazans have been killed throughout this war. So it's primarily that the Pennsylvania dollars are being used to back what they would consider a massacre of civilians.
Now, this is an election year. She is a Republican. She's running for re-election here. So how have the candidates in the other race, the Democratic candidates like Aaron McClelland and State Representative Ryan Borzaro have responded to the treasurer's investment decision?
Yeah, McClelland and Borzaro have somewhat different answers. Borzaro, I think he did say that he didn't know if the investment was a smart choice or reactionary on the part of Garrity, but he did say that, broadly speaking, he supports Israel bonds. He didn't clarify as to whether or not he would continue or increase the investment if he was elected, but he did, he says that he's broadly in support of investing in Israel bonds. McClellan was a little bit more stringent in that she said she would hesitate to invest any new funds in any foreign investments at all. regarding Israel bonds, she cited the fact that Moody's rated Israel's credit or downgraded Israel's credit rating following the war. So it would make it citing. Essentially, it means that it's less likely that Israel could pay us back in the future. So she cited that as a reason for why she would be hesitant to invest any further in Israel bonds, as well as foreign investments as a whole.
Right. Now we mentioned that this is an election year. What do you think some of the potential effects of this decision to invest in Israel bonds and increase the amount of investment into Israel bonds will have on the upcoming election for state treasurer? How do you think voters would react to this issue?
Yeah, I think it's just another way that Treasury candidates can show their sort of political agenda, their political ideology, where they stand, which is typically not what voters want to know, but when they're going into the polls. So Garrity has not been shy about her political positions, being against Reggie. She divested from Chinese securities earlier in, I believe, 2022. She divested from Russian and Belarus security before it was mandated by the state legislature. So she's not shy about making her political standings known. So I think, if anything, it's definitely at least informative for voters to know what her priorities are, what her values are when she's making investments or divesting.
Looking ahead, and do you think this might have some broader impacts on the treasurer's investment choices in going future treasurers, on exactly what they're investing taxpayer dollars on?
Yeah, I do think it's context dependent. I think that we were trying to find, when we were doing this piece, if there had been treasurers in the past that had divested or invested on foreign securities based off of whatever foreign policy was happening at the time. I believe in 2011, the state decided to divest from Sudan. But other than that, we couldn't find too much. So it's not completely unheard of, the treasurer getting involved in foreign policy. I think it's just pretty rare. It's not super, super common. That being said, like, the treasurer is elected in the state. So it is a political office. You have a political theory, ideology, agenda, whatever you want to call it, that does form the decisions that you're making. I have definitely spoken with sources who say they would rather that the treasurer doesn't get super involved in foreign policy, but I've also spoken with sources who say if it falls under, if the investments are still considered secure and good investments, then the treasurer can do whatever she wants. So I think it does depend on the person, essentially, and the foreign policy event that is happening. But yeah, broadly speaking, I think that to an extent you can't prevent foreign policy from affecting financial decisions.
Okay, before we go, is there anything else we have not touched on you want folks to know about this particular article about the treasurer's investment that we have not covered yet?
I don't think anything in particular. I think there's maybe something to be said about Treasury candidates being able to promote an agenda and a policy. I know Garrity's spoken against this thing that's called ESG investing, environmental, social, and governance investment, where the investor uses those categories to inform what kind of investment decisions they make. So even big companies like Vanguard, S&P, they have ESG stocks that are different from their normal index stocks, but prioritize companies that have good environmental practices or social practices or whatever it may be. So that's like another angle to look at when you are thinking about who you want to elect as treasurer, if you want a treasurer that prioritizes that. I believe that's something that McClellan has talked about a little bit, but I don't think Brazzaro has yet, at least not on the record.
We're talking to Kate Huangpu,
Okay.
government reporter for Spotlight PA, talking about the Pennsylvania treasurer, Stacey Garrity, who's facing re-election this year, and people are questioning her investment into Israel bonds. Kate, thank you so much for joining us on this program and letting us know, giving an insight into some insights to the political world of Pennsylvania. We'll talk with Kate again from Spotlight PA. Thank you so much, and take care. We appreciate it.
Thank you. All right. Thanks so much.